This is a phone from 1983. It cost $4,000, weighed 2.5 pounds, and gave you 30 minutes of talk time before it needed 10 hours to recharge. This is a phone from today. It fits in your pocket, and it's more powerful than the computers that sent humans to the moon. How did we get from one to the other? It didn't happen overnight. It happened in a handful of moments that changed everything. Let's go back to where it all started. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell filed a patent for a device that could transmit the human voice through a wire. The first words ever spoken over a telephone were simple. "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." It wasn't glamorous. It was Bell calling his assistant in the next room. But it proved something no one had proven before. Sound could travel as electricity. For the next century, phones stayed exactly like this: wired, shared, bolted to a wall. If you wanted to make a call, you didn't just pick up your phone. You went to where the phone was. That single limitation, being tied to a wall, is the exact problem someone would spend the next 100 years trying to solve. Fast forward to 1973. A Motorola engineer named Martin Cooper is standing on a street in Manhattan, holding a 2.5-pound brick of a device. He dials a number. Not a friend, not his office. His rival at Bell Labs, the company racing Motorola to build the first mobile phone. And he says, essentially, "I'm calling you from a cell phone." It was a flex. But it was also the first time in history a phone call had been made without a wire attached to it. The technology worked. The problem now was that it would take another decade just to make it something you could actually buy. That decade ends in 1983. When Motorola releases the DynaTAC 8000X, the first commercially available mobile phone. $4,000, 30 minutes of battery life. It's nicknamed the Brick, and that nickname is generous. But it doesn't matter, because for the first time, if you had the money, you could own a phone that left the house with you. It becomes a status symbol. Wall Street brokers, real estate agents, anyone who wanted to look important was seen holding one. The technology existed. What hadn't happened yet was making it something a regular person could afford. And that gap wouldn't close for another 16 years. In between, something quieter happens that ends up mattering just as much. In 1992, an engineer sends the first ever SMS text message. It just says, "Merry Christmas." At the time, almost nobody thinks texting will catch on. Some engineers wanted to cut the feature entirely because voice calls were the whole point of a phone. Nobody expected that this side feature, almost an afterthought, would eventually become the primary way an entire generation communicates. Which brings us to 1999 and the phone that changes who owns a phone at all: the Nokia 3210. No external antenna, built-in games, including Snake, and critically, it's actually affordable. Nokia sells 160 million of these. This is the moment the phone stops being a rich person's accessory and becomes something every household has. But even with texting, even with Snake, it's still just a phone. It makes calls, it sends texts, and that's it. The next shift wouldn't just improve the phone, it would completely redefine what a phone even is. And that shift happens in 2007. Apple releases the iPhone. No physical keyboard, a full touchscreen. A year later, the App Store opens, and suddenly your phone isn't just a phone anymore. It's a camera, a music player, a computer, a map, all in one device. Everything that's happened since 2007 isn't really the evolution of the phone. It's the evolution of the smartphone, a completely different category that this one device created. From a wire on the wall in 1876 to a supercomputer in your pocket in 2007. And that's just the phone getting invented. What happens after this might be even crazier. If you want part 2, covering how the smartphone itself evolved, let me know in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss it.